So in order to use Python to interact with the Revit API, we need to know how to view the Revit API first. I know that sounds a little bit simple, but there are a few ways to do this. So first of all, there are three methods that I typically use on any given day to work within the Revit API. Just to define that as well, an API is the application programming interface for a software. That allows us to know what we can do within that software. A lot of platforms have APIs that you can work with, a lot do not. We're lucky to where Revit has an API that we can actually use to automate things, which is really great. That being said, any new features that are added to Revit typically have API associated with it as well. Recently, they added path of travel to Revit in Revit 2021 or 2022. Along with that, we had access to the shortest path algorithms in the API, which was really cool. In Revit 23, we got access to viewport swapping and things like that. Those are in the API as well, which is really great. First, the most traditional way to access the API is to download the SDK or Software Development Kit right from the Autodesk Developer Network. The Autodesk Developer Network is a platform for you to be able to sign up for and ask questions and get resources to help you as well. So that's available to you. It's linked in the resources for this lesson, but it is a great place to go because there are a lot of super knowledgeable people there that you can ask questions, especially if you start to take your Dynamo and Python journey even further by creating Revit plugins and things like that. In this case, you do need to download the SDK. I downloaded the 2023 SDK, and we'll look at that here in a moment. And it was about 400 megabytes. So it is a pretty decent download size. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And you would have to install that on each computer that you want to view it on. My favorite way of looking at the API though is a website called apidocs.co. This is another website that is managed by a community member. So this is made by someone who just wanted to have documentation online and it didn't exist until they did it. So really great. It's a ad supported site. So I encourage you to disable ad blockers for it just to help support the site, or you can contribute to it other ways. I tend to upload the API references as they come out, and that's kind of my contribution each year. The Revit API docs is created by the same individual and it's targeted for Revit. apidocs.co has other APIs in there as well, like Rhino and Navisworks and things like that. So it is a resource for more than just Revit, but its interface is really nice, and we'll see that in a moment. So let's go ahead and jump into these and see how each of them look. All right, so the first one is the traditional CHM file, which is part of the SDK. So this is a file that you can just open from your program files after installing it. And like I said, it's like 400 megabytes to install. But by default, it'll actually expose everything in kind of this browser looking window as well, where you can start to click on things. So if we know we want to work down within Revit elements, we can actually start to click through and work that way, or you can search as well. What I really like about this is this comes out right when Revit comes out. So Revit 23 came out and this came out like the same week. You can download this and see all the what's new things in here as well. So what have they added to the API? What did they remove? What did they change? All that stuff's in there. So that's what's really nice about downloading this quickly. The community built websites take a little longer to get updated because those are things people do in their free time. So I always encourage you to try to support those where you can as well. So in this case, what's new? If we knew that we wanted to work with walls, we can search for wall and we'll start to see the wall class once again. So that's that category within there, kind of like how dog was a category once again. And you can start to see some of the new stuff added and things like that. In the case of actually seeing everything possible for a wall, if we search for a wall, we can display all the different properties. So in this case, we'll click on properties and we'll see that this is what a wall supports. So orientation is an option in here. So you can get the orientation of a wall. You can get the parameters. You can see if it's pinned. You can get the sketch from it. All those items are available in walls. So as you click on these, it will actually give you sample code as well in C# or VB.NET to be able to see what you can do. There are no Python resources in this resource, so that is something else to keep in mind. But Python is pretty compatible with C# to where you can deconstruct this as well, which is nice. Once again, you are able to download the SDK from that developer network, and each Revit version will have its own version. That includes point updates more often than not, because sometimes they add things to those point releases. So always keep that in mind too. So once again, 400 megabytes times 6, it starts to get pretty big after a while. So keep that in mind. The method that I use the most is api.docs.co, and once again, they have APIs for other platforms. But if we navigate to Revit, we can check out the Revit 23 API, and this looks pretty similar to the file that we had open initially, but it is in the web. This is really nice if you're working and you want to send someone a link to an API, and it's really handy to have. It even has the what's new section for you to see what's new. So once this is updated, you do have access to all that. In this case, if we search for wall, we will see all the different things that work with walls. In this case, we want the wall class. So I think if we put a space and a C for wall class, you can actually start to scroll through and see all the different things available to us. So we will see the same items that we saw in the CHM file, which is pinned, location, orientation, parameters, and all that good stuff. In this case, if we click on it, we will see that it kind of looks the same as a CHM. It does tell us which version of Revit this was introduced in. So this one was introduced, or which one it is in. This one's in Revit 23, obviously, but you can start to see where all that's changed as well. In this case, if you were to click on this little code icon, you are also able to see open source code that relates to this exact method. In this case, that's pinned. So you'll see that the building coder, which is a great resource, I linked it below for this lesson, has a lot of resources on GitHub. Archilab's a Dynamo package that's really useful for this as well. And I believe Rhythm gets parsed for this if I have any pinned in there as well. So all these are just getting searched on GitHub, and they surface them for you to be able to see those resources, which is really great. If you click on see also, it will take you to other things that are related. You can see that this comes from the element class, and we'll break that down a bit more as we get into actually building scripts out in Python. The other one that's really nice is RevitAPIDocs.com. Once again, this is made by a community member. It's the same community member who makes API docs. His name's Guy. Definitely give him a shout out if you're using these resources. But in this case, this one exclusively targets Revit API. So if we search for wall class, I'm looking at it in 23 again. And this one's really nice because it does have some of the versioning things in there as well. So you will see that they updated this API a couple times for the wall class. So in 23, they added some things, and in 21, they added some things as well. In this case, let's do view title or viewport. So in viewport, if we look at properties, we will see that we have a few different options in here. Label line length was added in Revit 22, so to control that line on your viewports. In Revit API docs, you can actually see that all of the versions up till Revit 22 don't have that option. So they did add that API in Revit 22. This is really handy for when you have the inevitable question of someone saying, hey, can you do blank in Dynamo? You can take a look at it here and say, oh, they didn't add that till Revit 22. We might want to upgrade or whatever. So that's an option for you on Revit API docs. In addition, you are able to look at some of the other related things to these. And the Revit API docs does have the syntax for C# and Visual Basic in here as well. So if you wanted to mess with those, you can kind of see how that starts to look. Once again, no Python resources here, but there are the resources for you to see how you type it out. And we'll break that down more as we get into it. In addition, the RevitAPIDocs.com has resources for sample Python scripts as well. So changing work sets, creating drafting views, and all that good stuff. He has all those created in here to where you can copy and paste those. So this is another great resource if you're looking to kind of learn some of the syntax for creating these things. In this case, this first one for create drafting view uses definitions, which we'll get to in a later lesson. At first, we're going to just iterate through lists in a very simple manner, but we'll get into definitions in a later lesson. So there we have it. Those are the 3 ways to view the Revit API. Once again, my preference is the middle one, apidocs.co. That's probably the one I'll have open the most in the lessons. but you can use any of these methods for your Python coding within the Revit API. I'll see you in the next lesson.